G'day! Welcome back to the Super Freak podcast. This episode is inspired by a client that I spoke to just this week, and as most of my episodes are, this is really about the kind of behind the scenes, the different conversations that I'm having with people, what they bring to the plate and the session, knowing full well that the conversations I have behind the scenes in my coaching practice are conversations that I don't just have once. So I know that by sharing this with you, it's probably going to help someone listening because you're probably feeling the same way. And this particular conversation was about needing to feel calm and worried about, not feeling rested or burning out or stressed while achieving something that is bigger, better, more brilliant than ever. So having a massive goal and stressing that it's going to take more than ever and it's going to exhaust you. So this episode is really about how to feel rested and spacious and calm while you achieve more than ever. And yes, it is possible. It sounds a bit like I'm about to say, just do your work from a bubble bath or something, but I'm not. I am a hard worker. And I love working. I'm also really well acquainted with burnout. I had chronic fatigue. For those of you who don't know my history, my story, I had chronic fatigue and I spent almost 3 years pretty much housebound, not completely, and sometimes even bedbound. It was pretty sick. And that was back in 2008 to 2010 or 2011. And ever since then, I know my body hasn't been the same. Maybe I never really got over it, but I'm no stranger to burnout. I know what it feels like. And in order for me to be able to run my business and do my thing, I've had to do things out of the box, think differently, be creative, make everything work in a way that can be done very easily and quite effortlessly for me, calling in a lot of support, etc. And I know a lot of my clients kind of want that for themselves. And one of the biggest struggles I had in doing this for myself was being able to set that boundary, was being able to say, even though I know I can work a little bit longer, even though I know I can make this a little bit more complex or harder, I can do it myself, even though I know that, I just had to always remember for myself that if I cross that boundary, I'm going to get really sick. And honestly, I think that that's a privilege because, and I know that sounds really weird, but it's like when someone is allergic to something that's kind of not good for them anyway, they would probably eat that thing if they weren't allergic to it, like a croissant. Oh, here we go again. Croissant. Let's just get over the gluten. Okay. So maybe it's something like alcohol. Okay, let's say wine. Someone is allergic to wine, and if they weren't allergic to wine, they'd probably guzzle it every single night after work. But because they're allergic to it, they just know I can't go there because the consequences are so great. So for a lot of people, the consequences of not slowing down are not so great. It's just like this low-key level of stress and anxiety. It's like this low-lying feeling of annoyance or always feeling like we're rushing. But because everyone's doing it, it doesn't feel abnormal and it's not that irritating. But if you have had experience with burnout and you know what it feels like to not be able to get up and feel good and the impact it has on your mental health and everything, relationships, then the cost of drinking the wine or, drinking the Kool-Aid, whatever it might be, the cost of it is actually so great. So that boundary is naturally set. That's why I say, for me, it's kind of a privilege that I had that experience because I was forced to set boundaries that I know I wouldn't have set had I not been forced to, because the consequences weren't that great. It wasn't that painful, overworking and everyone else was kind of doing it. It's really common. It's like a badge of honor, etc. But the truth is that the consequences were so great for me, so I had no choice. And nowadays, people ask me all the time, like they want to have a business or a career or something that works around them and do things their own way or their way. And it sounds really cool. It sounds nice and glamorous. It's a nice thing to talk about. And there is a price of entry, I suppose. And that price of entry is being willing to set a boundary when you don't really need to, because what I know for sure happens is when you set that boundary, people question it. If you are wanting to have a business that supports your lifestyle as a parent, a stay-at-home parent or a working parent, and you're making choices that are kind of different to maybe your family or your friends, people question it. If you're setting a boundary around when you work and when you don't work, some people may not understand that. Maybe some people will think being a woman, you can never do anything right, really. But people will think you need to work more or work less or whatever it might be. My point is, when I'm talking about, creating a calm feeling around achievement, I don't see it as a luxury. And I think some people perceive this as a conversation about creating more luxury. And I'm not against that, not at all. But I see it as curbing overwhelm, which is good for mental health. I see it as taking care of your physical health. I see it as investing in being able to do the work that you do and bring your gifts to the world sustainably. And to me, that's not negotiable. So when I say, this is all a caveat for the beginning of the podcast, but when I talk about how to feel rested and spacious while you achieve more than ever, that sounds really nice. But in my opinion, there's actually no other way to do it. I do not support crawling your way over the finishing line and feeling like, now that I'm done, I just need a holiday or a nap. I don't support that. I would much prefer the other end of the scale, where you've hit the goal and you're like, this was kind of boring. Not because it wasn't a fabulous goal, but because on the road to achievement, you have changed so much of who you are, your old habits, your old patterns, your thought processes, your interesting ideas, your limiting beliefs, etc., like who you be in the world. You've shifted so much of that this result is no longer something that is outside of you or something to attain or achieve. It's just who you are, just a natural extension of who you are. When you achieve things like that, there is this funny, I had a conversation with another client about this week. It's kind of disappointing because you think it's going to be something really quite spectacular, but it's not. It's really unglamorous to achieve everything that you want to achieve. In fact, it's not very much different to gradual shifts that you make. So life feels very much the same when you achieve big things. And I want that for my clients. I want it to be kind of like a boring walk-through process. That's not to say we don't celebrate, but because the alternative is that you feel like it was some kind of fluke or that something happened that is not repeatable. And that's not a sustainable way to be. So all of that is to preface that what I'm talking about this week is very, very close to my heart and something that I don't think is really negotiable anymore. The questions I get asked the most in my business are all around how to slow down and how to not feel so stressed and how to feel like I have more time and not be so anxious while I'm achieving and how to perform better and feel good while I'm performing. This is everything that this podcast is about. It's also about failing and being okay with that. Anyway, I've noticed after about 8 rounds of running a particular mastermind that I have run since about 2017, it's called the Fierce Salon. And I've noticed that this thing happens every single time people sign up. There's a couple of ways it works out. Number one is a person will be really, really ready to achieve results like straight away. And as soon as they get in there, it's like the space or the permission or the support, whatever it might be, or the community, it just kind of opens everything up for them and they start achieving results really, really quickly. And for some people, another thing happens where they spend the entire time in the group kind of learning and absorbing and taking it all in. And it's not until after the group ends, or sometimes hilariously right at the very end, they have a major insight and they get it and they realize what's been holding them back, or it all clicks and all the success happens the day the mastermind or the experience ends because they kind of, it's all integrated and it takes off. And the second version of that is so unsexy to a lot of achievement kind of circles. I want to speak to that. But in my world, I'm not attached to how quickly someone achieves a result. It would make me look really good. It would make them feel really good if we could set a goal and say, by this date, this thing is happening. But ultimately, the thing that we cannot argue with is that that date was a rectal pull. It was made up. You made it up. You gave yourself a timeline. Now, there's a good part of that, and that is that it lights up a fire in your belly and it gets you going. But sometimes that date can cause a little bit of stress as well. So I think it's really important that whenever you are in a space of achievement, you hold the paradox that yes, you have timelines and you have deadlines and you have outlines and you have whatever, but they're ultimately made up. The only failure is when you stop or when you quit or when you give up on yourself. And so often I see huge results happen after the program or the community has kind of ended and there's a little bit of space and then whooshka, everything sort of goes. Anyway, but what tends to happen is though, because of that lack of kind of safety around things taking the amount of time that they need to take, most people don't understand their own natural pace. We've been so conditioned to do things by the pace of a school curriculum or the pace of a university curriculum or the pace of our workplace. So often we are not aware of our own natural pace. And sometimes that's simply the reason why inside of a group program, you will find that you don't achieve the results in the time that you said they would happen because your perception of how long things take you is just whacked. It's like completely out of whack, I should say. So what I've noticed is that people think often that just by kind of signing up to something or setting a goal, magically, because they've set the goal now or they've set a date, there will be no other life or otherwise distractions preventing them from taking action. And this could not be further from the truth because life will always life. Now, unfortunately as well, there aren't a lot of spaces that we grow up in and experience in our kind of achievement game where it is really safe for things to just go wrong or for unexpected things to happen or for there to be time to make mistakes and fail and come back again and space for you to get the insight. And I find that really bizarre because so much of my best learning happens when I have the space to screw up and then the space to actually think about how I screwed up, why I screwed up, what I learned from that, and then to try again until I succeed. And that comes from a lot of space to be able to do so. So it's not about achieving something in a set amount of time. But what can happen is when we set a goal or we sign up for something or we decide that we want to achieve something big, there's this low-key stress about achieving it within a certain amount of time. And that low-key stress is preventing you from the space, like, when you want to create a piece of art or maybe just trying to be creative at anything and there's a timer or imagine if someone was watching you like right over your shoulder and commenting on every word that you wrote. Like, I wouldn't write it like that. It's really difficult to feel creative when you're under pressure. And the attainment of goals and the achievement of goals, especially when it's something like outside of your comfort zone, you need to be able to take pressure off and apply it at your own pace and in your own way and at the right time, so that when it's time to be creative, or when it's time to gather lessons or insights about things that have happened, you take the pressure right off and you allow those insights to come. And that is so important and so not nurtured in us naturally. Like right through education, growing up, it's all about, come on, hurry up, get out the door. We've got to go here. We've got to do this. Like there's no, when do you want to do this by, I am just going to take a little moment to interrupt this podcast and let you know that right now you can download an amazing free resource that I have just released. And that resource is a business housekeeping checklist. So if you're someone who's in business, and even if you love systems and you have them in place, if you haven't got a system and a setup for making sure that all of the wheelhouses and all the parts of your business are running like a well-oiled machine, a regular honest check-in periodically on all the different parts of your business that make it tick, and you would like some support in automating that and being able to delegate that, you can download the checklist at the link at the bottom of this podcast episode. That's it. Back to the podcast. So this conversation was inspired by a client this week who is halfway through a coaching program with me, or was about to have their halfway point kind of session, and said to me beforehand, like, I've achieved so many of the things that I originally set out to achieve in this program, but they're all like internal state things, like the way I am and who I'm being. And it's so incredible. I can feel that change, but now I'm really worried that I've only got half of our program left to achieve all these kind of external things, like physical goals. And she was worried about achieving all the physical and practical things. And it's really natural to start worrying. But the thing is, what this person had not taken into account was that so much of that internal work was exactly what was preventing them from being able to take the actions previously. So if we don't take the time to slow down and explore mindset, attitude, energy, emotions, all that stuff, if we don't take the time to sit down and actually have a way of contemplating that and processing it, you will be pushing a boulder up a hill your entire time working towards your goal. And that would make me very sad. I don't want you to do that. So what I said to this person was, I reiterated that doing that internal work is going to free up so much energy and bandwidth. But here's the other thing that they hadn't considered. In our time working together, something that was absolutely not on the cards, not on her plate, not even in her realm of awareness of something that could happen for her, was buying a house. And she bought a house. It was not on the cards before we started. During our time working together, it came onto the cards. It actually was on the table. They went to buy it, and then, long story short, it happened. Now, during that time, she was working on her mindset. She was working on all the things that we were doing together in our coaching and completely separating these two things. One was the goal that we were working on together, and the other was the fact that she was buying a house, which was not in the calendar, like not expected, on the road to achieving this goal. And this is where I really want to speak to you about achieving goals today, because this is exactly what happens. People sign up for coaching not realizing that it is guaranteed unexpected things are going to happen. You will set a goal not realizing unexpected things are going to happen. And if we feel like those things are a distraction, they're taking us away from being able to achieve it, we're missing out on so much magic, okay? So whenever I set a goal with a client, part of the process is reminding them that now everything, especially when it's like a goal that feels impossible to them or something that we don't actually know the how, like we know what it is, what it looks like, we don't know all the steps in between. They're the kind of goals I love working on with people because they're super cheeky and they really inspire so much self-belief when you achieve them. And it's so often that it happens. It makes us realize we're not thinking very big in a way, because if we can achieve this, what else is possible? It just opens up so much. So part of that process is always reminding a person now, in order to attain this goal, everything that now has to happen in order for this event to occur is rapidly shifting and changing unconsciously in your stream of time to support it. You have done a process to set it out in motion in the future. You've placed it in a time stream in your future. And now everything that has to happen in order to get you there is going to shift and move and change. And sometimes what they don't realize that means is things will go quote unquote wrong. Things will go quote unquote too slowly. Things will quote unquote get in the way. But that is not how I perceive these things. So part of my coaching practice and part of my belief in coaching is that everything is relevant. Everything that's going on is relevant. Otherwise, it does not take into account your body. It does not take into account your personal life, your relationship, your health, How many times have I been working with someone and they have had bereavement, or they've had a pregnancy or a miscarriage or some kind of issue, and it becomes part of that person's curriculum for their coaching. Now, sometimes the thing that gets in the way, it doesn't feel like a good thing. Sometimes it seems like a good thing and sometimes it's not. Like buying a house, good distraction. Pregnancy, good distraction for most people. A new relationship, good distraction. But nothing has to steer you away from goal attainment if you don't separate these two things. So a lot of people will separate them And compartmentalize. I'm a big fan of compartmentalizing when you need to, but I don't think it's always necessary. So sometimes people compartmentalize and they think I'm just going to push through and get this thing done and kind of pretend this other thing over here isn't happening. Or they let that thing completely derail their goals and achievement because they think, well, now that this has happened, it's all over, Red Rover. I'm done. I've got to start all over again, blow it up, break it down. It's over. So I've seen this happen where, like I said, someone might lose their job in your family and now there's extra financial pressure and you were relying on a certain amount of cash flow in order to be able to pay for the thing that you were doing or invest in your business or whatever it might be, or you get sick unexpectedly. All of these things take up mental and physical bandwidth. So all of this conversation is to support you in feeling calm and spacious while you achieve more. Now, the first thing I want you to remember is that you need to understand that when these things happen, and they will, guaranteed, you are going to use bandwidth, mental, emotional, and physical bandwidth to deal with those things. And one of the biggest precursors to burnout is ignoring the extra stuff that's going on and not acknowledging what you're really spending your time on. So you'll start to think that you feel rushed all the time. Okay, great example. This year, I've had sciatica since January. It started getting bad in January. There was a period of about 2 weeks in March where I had like nothing going on with my back. And then boom, it came back really, really bad. So it's been a few months and I haven't been able to sit for longer than like 20 minutes. When I sit, it's really uncomfortable. I'm constantly trying to stretch. My appointments to see chiro and acupuncture, everything is at least a 35 to 1 hour. So it's a couple of hours anytime I want to go and visit someone to get a treatment, which is like half a day out of my working week in the end. And that has taken up not only like the physical time it's taken me to go and see people to help with my back, but the amount of time it's taken away from being able to focus, being in pain just takes up a lot of bandwidth. It's been really quite exhausting. All of that, it takes up bandwidth. Okay, so add in a few of those things like buying a house or then having visitors at your house or being pregnant or bringing on a new team member or losing a team member if you have a small business. Add a few of these things and you'll wonder why you feel so rushed all the time and achieving your goals feels hard. We need to actually make space for the extra things we need to do to achieve a goal. But some people do this just in their daily life. So maybe, you spend a significant amount of time driving people places like family or kids or whatever, but you don't count your travel time as part of your day and you don't count the incidental time around that travel time also as part of your day. So even if it's only like 15 or 20 minutes to drop the kids at school, it's easy to just not count that time and then not counting also the time between, say, parking and saying goodbye and someone forgetting a shoe or whatever, and then dropping them off and then walking back to the car, or when you pick them up, walking back to the car and then saying hello to other people. Next thing you know, it's actually 45 minutes and you haven't counted that time at all and you're wondering why you feel stressed. So there are really two parts to this episode that I want to emphasize. Number one, everything counts. Not only everything you do in a day, but everything that's happening in your life at the same time as you're working on achieving this goal. It all counts towards helping you get there. Sometimes it's a good thing, like buying a house. Sometimes it's a really distracting thing, like having a sore back. But all of the things that need to happen in order for the goal to occur is rapidly shifting and changing unconsciously in the stream of time to support it happening sustainably. So, for example, the home that you buy, it might feel like a huge distraction and a huge amount of time away from the program or away from working on what it is that you want to work on, but it's location stability. Now there's more bandwidth for other things, more bandwidth for action. It's a good thing, but it was completely off the plan, right? Or perhaps, having a sore back has taken me away from work and other things I've really wanted to just sink my teeth into for a while, but having that space away from, my ability to just kind of sit and work has actually given me a different perspective on certain things and changed the way that I'm thinking about them. And so the work I'm producing is a bit different and the things I'm working on and the direction I'm going is a little bit different. So I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna here and say everything happens for a reason and you should just, be grateful for every crappy thing that happens. though it might be useful to consider that concept for the filter of lessons to help you kind of move on. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is things happen and they take up bandwidth. And rather than trying to pretend that they're not happening, make space for them. So the first thing is everything that happens counts. Everything you do counts. And the second part is you need to upfront include extra time for yourself, even if it's just mentally saying to yourself, this is going to take so much longer than I think, and it could happen quicker than I imagine, but it also could take longer. Include the extra time for the unexpected so you won't feel rushed. And then if you get it done earlier, it's a bonus. But it's way harder to make space for these things in the moment, even if it is only mentally, because you're telling yourself, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. I'm so overwhelmed. Then when you expect that it's completely normal that things will happen. So this is no different to having an emergency savings account. A lot of people don't save for a rainy day, and then they're constantly battling back and forth using credit cards and whatnot and wondering why they can just never pay off their credit card, or they always feel like they're financially behind. But the one thing we can guarantee is that unexpected things will happen, and it's the same with achieving your goals. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Number one, think about what it is that you're working on, what you want to achieve, what you want to attain, or perhaps something that you have just signed up for in terms of maybe coaching or a mastermind or something that you're thinking about doing. I want you to just mentally do a little thought experiment and expect the unexpected. Give yourself the gift of the feeling of an exhale when you just tell yourself, I'm going to expect the unexpected. I'm going to allow space for the unexpected. I am going to predict that unpredictable things will happen and it will be okay. If you're anything like me, that just felt like an exhale to you, because our first unconscious thought is, I want to get this done and there is no room for anything to go wrong and it has to go right because blah, blah, blah. So number one, expect the unexpected and allow for it. Predict it, expect it, give yourself more time. Two, I want you to make a list of everything you do in a day. And on an average day, I don't care if it includes napping. I don't care if it includes baking cookies with a niece or nephew. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be that you just love to spend a really long time getting ready in the morning. Write it down and give yourself enough time in your day to do the things you want to do, achieve your goals, working around the things that you love to do, like working out, like having time for self-care, spending time with the ones you love, getting dressed in the morning. Like imagine if you could just leave a lot of space in your day, enough time that you need to do that at a leisurely pace. I really love the word leisure, by the way. A leisurely pace. And then all the tasks that you need to do to achieve the goal that you need to achieve have to fit around that leisurely pace of you doing the things that you love as well as resting. That's going to extend, not actually that significantly, but it will extend the amount of time it's going to take for you to achieve the goal. But what it's also going to do is it means whenever you do take action, you're rested, you're calm, you have energy, you have clarity, you have peace of mind, you feel ready, you feel prepared, you feel good. And that can end up meaning that you act from inspiration. That can end up meaning that you act from a place of more energy. Things happen faster, they happen easier, they happen quicker. This can actually speed up the process. So it sounds counterintuitive. So that's the second thing. I want you to write down all the things that you do in a day and how long they actually take you. Then the actions that you need to take to achieve your goals need to fit outside of those things. So you can do everything at your own pace. This is how you discover your own pace. This is how you make space for unexpected things to happen. And this is also how you create things at a sustainable pace as well. So you're not crawling over the finish line needing a nap. Really, really important. The final thing I want you to remember is that everything that has to happen in order for your goal to occur is now going to rapidly shift and unconsciously change in your unconscious stream of time. So there'll be things that come up that seem like they're in the way. There'll be things that come up that seem like happy distractions. I don't want you to think about them as distractions. I don't want you to think about them as in the way whatsoever. I want you to think about them as your curriculum, as part of creating what it is that you want, because there will be insights, there will be unexpected benefits from being with what is. And the best bit of all, the bit that everyone forgets, is that when you are with what is and you take on those insights, it often speeds up the inevitable, and it speeds up the goal happening, and it makes things happen in ways that you couldn't expect before, because there is so much here for you in the present moment, in what is. So if you are someone who is experiencing a challenge right now, if you're not feeling well, if something has happened in your life that feels like it has completely thrown you off course, good or not so good, if you're feeling extra distracted by something right now, please know this doesn't have to be the thing that gets in the way of you having everything that you want. This can be the thing that through it, you gain insights, you gain clarity, you gain more growth, and you're able to speed up your results. And what if that was true? Because it's true for so many of my clients. So I hope you've really enjoyed this episode today. Make sure you give yourself the space and the bandwidth. And remember, everything you want is so much closer than you think. So stay curious, stay open, and stay with what is. See you in the next episode.